Hey, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Welcome to another Through the Bible with Grandpa. Olive, I'm going to be coming out there with your grandmother to make our first visit and to meet you in person on Saturday. This is Wednesday, so it'll just be a couple days, and we're very, very, very impatient. And you become more beautiful every day. Last time we were in Genesis chapter 30, and we saw that as Jacob had, the last of his 12 sons and then his daughter, he started thinking about leaving. But he stayed for a while. And while he stayed, he was the shepherd for Laban, his uncle Laban, his father-in-law. And there was this really weird set of circumstances that God was in control of, where there were speckled, spotted, striped goats, and no matter what happened, no matter how they tried to manipulate it, the ones that Jacob got, I think they were the ones with the marks on them. They grew exponentially, and the others didn't. So he wound up with more sheep and goats and stuff than his father-in-law. So it's about time for Jacob to leave. Now, if you remember, he's there partially because he ran away from his brother, who he stole the blessing from, Esau, and his brother's going to kill him. So that's going to come back into play pretty soon. So once again, we're in the Net Bible, Reader's Edition. I always have trouble figuring out which way's which on this screen. It's different than the camera, the camera phone. Chapter 31 of Genesis says, Jacob heard that Laban's sons were complaining. Jacob has taken everything that belonged to our father. He has gotten rich at our father's expense. When Jacob saw the look on Laban's face, he could tell his attitude toward him had changed. So Laban knows it's time for him to leave too. The Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your father. And to your relatives, I will be with you. So whether he wanted to go or stay, whether Laban wanted him to go or stay, it was up to the Lord to tell him when. So Jacob sent a messenger for Rachel and Leah to come to the field where his flocks were. There he said to them, I can tell that your father's attitude toward me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father as hard as I could, but your father has humiliated me and changed my wages 10 times. So, and that's what he did. Every time he would move the goalposts, as we say in modern day America. Every time he met the goal, Laban would go, oh, no, there's something else you have to do. Just like when he tricked him into marrying Leah when he wanted Rachel. But God has not permitted him to do me any harm. If he said the speckled animals would be your wage, then the entire flock gave birth to speckled offspring. But if he said the streaked animals would be your wage, then the entire flock gave birth to streaked offspring. This would be funny to watch, actually. Like Laban going out there every time that goats are born and going like, dang, drat. Okay, next time, speckled. You get the speckled. And then he goes out there and goes like, no, they're all speckled. In this way, God has snatched away your father's livestock and given them to me. So Laban's sons say they stole them, but Jacob knows that they're a blessing. And listen, Laban used him, so it's no biggie. I wish every time somebody used me that God would give me speckled and spotted and dappled boots. I'd sell them, but my neighbors would probably be pretty mad if I kept them. Once during breeding season, I saw in a dream that the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, and spotted. In the dream, the angel of God said to me, Jacob. Here I am, I replied. Then he said, observe that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted, for I have observed all that Laban has done to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the sacred stone and made a vow to me. Now leave this land immediately and return to your native land. So now it's not just like, hey, it's time to go. Now it's like, get on your camel, boy, and get. Then Rachel and Leah replied to him, do we still have any portion of inheritance in our father's house? Hasn't he treated us like foreigners? He not only sold us, but completely wasted the money paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God snatched away from our father belongs to us and to our children. So now do everything God has told you. So the sisters are kind of connivers too. They're like, if he still had money, that the bride price and stuff like that, we may stay here. But because God snatched it from him and gave it to you, we're ready to pack up and go. So Jacob immediately put his children and his wives on the camels. He took away all the livestock he had acquired in Padam Aram and all his movable property that he had accumulated. Then he set out toward the land of Canaan to return to his father Isaac. So, and most of what these folks had, they were nomadic tribes. And so what they had was portable. Now, it was a lot. He may have had hundreds and hundreds of animals. He had servants to tend those animals and all kinds of stuff. The Bible sometimes is written simplistically, even though it's describing something that's much more complicated. It was like Jacob was out there, he was the only one tending the animals, but he had servants that he had like, they were like cowboys in the Old West. They were ranch hands that would go out there and do what he told them to do. While Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole the household idols that belonged to her father. Jacob also deceived Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him he was leaving. He left him with all he owned. He quickly crossed the Euphrates River and headed for the hill country of Gilead. So the Euphrates River is in modern day Iraq, and it was a river that flowed into Babylon. Now, they weren't that close to Babylon. And it's quite a crossing. I'm sure that it was, like the Mississippi River or something. And then he's heading for Gilead. He's heading for the Holy Land. And he's making good progress. 3 days later, Laban discovered Jacob had left. So he took his relatives with him and pursued Jacob for 7 days. He caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. So he's not that far from being home. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and warned him, be careful that you neither bless nor curse Jacob. Laban overtook Jacob, and when Jacob pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead, Laban and his relatives set up camp there too. What have you done? Laban demanded of Jacob, you've deceived me and carried away my daughters. It is as if they were captives of war. Why did you run away secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you off with a celebration? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. With a celebration complete with singing, tambourines, and harps. You didn't even allow me to kiss my daughters and my grandchildren goodbye. You have acted foolishly. I have the power to do you harm, but the God of your father told me last night, be careful that you neither bless nor curse Jacob. Now I understand that you have gone away because you longed desperately for your father's house. Yet why did you steal my gods? Let me tell you something. First off, Jacob should have been telling Rachel and Leah that those gods were false idols, because he knew that. And Rachel shouldn't have stolen from her father. But I do want to say this. If you have a god or gods that you worship and they can be stolen, you need to get yourself a new god, like the real God. I left secretly because I was afraid, Jacob replied to Laban. I thought you might take your daughters away from me by force. Whoever has taken your gods will be put to death. In the presence of our relatives, identify whatever is yours and take it. Take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So he's gone, we didn't take anything, man. You search. You find the person that did it, I'm going to kill them. No, he's not going to want to kill Rachel. So Laban entered Jacob's tent and Leah's tent and the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find the idols. Then he left Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the idols and put them inside her camel's saddle and sat on them. And also, if you can sit on your God, it's not a real God. You need the real one, trust me. Laban searched the whole tent but did not find them. Rachel said to her father, don't be angry, my lord. I cannot stand up in your presence because I am having my period. Likely story. So apparently, like when your dad walked in, you had to stand up, but she didn't have to. So he searched thoroughly, but did not find the idols. Jacob became angry and argued with Laban. What did I do wrong? He demanded of Laban. What sin of mine prompted you to chase after me in hot pursuit? When you searched through all my goods, did you find anything that belonged to you? Set it here before my relatives and yours, and let them settle the dispute between the two of us. I have been with you for the past 20 years. Your ewes and female goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flock. Animals torn by wild beasts I never brought to you. I always absorbed the loss myself. And that's what they would do. Because somebody would eat an animal and then go, yeah, like a wolf got it, a wolf killed it. But what would happen is if you heard the thing getting attacked by the wolf, you'd go out there, you'd try to kill the wolf, and then you would take that animal, and if it died, you would take it to the owner of the animals and say, look, I didn't eat this. Here, you can have this. And he said that he didn't do that, that he actually he ate the loss and probably could have eaten the animal too, because it was his. If he took a healthy animal and gave it to Laban, then he could eat that one that was attacked by the wolf. You always made me pay for every missing animal, whether it was taken by day or at night. I was consumed by scorching heat during the day and by piercing cold at night, and I went without sleep. This was my lot for 20 years in your house. I worked like a slave for you. 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks. But you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the one whom Isaac fears, had not been with me, you would certainly have sent me away empty-handed. But God saw how I was oppressed and how hard I worked, and he rebuked you last night. Laban replied to Jacob, these women are my daughters, these children are my grandchildren, and these flocks are my flocks. All that you see belongs to me. But how can I harm these daughters of mine today, or the children to whom they have given birth? So now come, let's make a formal agreement, you and I, and it will be proof that we have made peace. So Laban's full of crap. This stuff isn't all his. It's all Jacob's. Jacob got it fair and square. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a memorial pillar. Then he said to his relatives, gather stones. So they brought stones and put them in a pile. They ate there by the pile of stones. Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, this pile of stones is a witness of our agreement today. That is why it was called Galeed, so that Galeed means witness. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, may the Lord watch between us when we are out of sight of one another. And so that's interesting because they make these pieces of jewelry. It's usually a heart, and it's like a broken heart in half, like boop, 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 jagged lines, and the two pieces of the heart fit together, and it'll say this on there: the Lord watched between you and me while we're apart. And so, two lovers, if they're going to be separated, like the guy's going off to war. These days, it could be the woman going off to war. The guy's going to stay home. Then each one takes a half of the heart, and they have the Mizpah. They're called Mizpah charms or something. But that's not what this is saying about. This is saying, like, these are two sneaky, like, conniving, crooked guys, and they don't trust each other. They're cut from the same bolt of cloth. And it's like, Lord, watch him for me. And the other guy's saying, Lord, watch him for me. So that's what that's all about. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no one else is with us, realize that God is witness of your actions. So he is a sanctimonious a-hole. That's all I can say. Laban. He was definitely in the wrong. He kept them there for 20 years, 14 years working to get the daughters, and then is now acting like he's the Holy One. Here is the pile of stones, and this pillar I have set up between me and you, Laban said to Jacob. This pile of stones and the pillar are reminders that I will not pass beyond this pile to come to harm you, and that you will not pass beyond this pile and this pillar to come to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the gods of their father, judge between us. So he's bringing all the gods in here. Jacob took an oath by the God whom his father Isaac feared. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and invited his relatives to eat the meal. They ate the meal and spent the night on the mountain. Early in the morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters goodbye and blessed them. Then Laban left and returned home. Peace out.